Word of prayer, and then we'll get started into 1 Corinthians chapter 16, which is the last chapter, and we'll wrap that up today probably and move on to the second epistle next week. So let's all bow together. Amen. When you open up the 16th chapter of 1 Corinthians, what we have there is our text regarding free will offerings in the Lord's church. Oftentimes these first two verses of chapter 16 are read in the public assembly prior to the free will offering as our authorization, scriptural authorization for doing this on the first day of the week. And Paul starts out, and I think these first two words, or first few words here, actually caused some problems at the church in Corinth, and which in my opinion just gives a little bit of insight into the character of the church. He says, concerning the collection of the saints, for the saints, as I've given order to the churches in Galatia, so you must do also. Well, it seems that they didn't take that very well. That he says, I've ordered the churches in Galatia, and you must do this also. And when you go to 2 Corinthians, and we'll study this when we get to 2 Corinthians, but it behooves us to also look at it today, chapters 8 and 9, because it seems that what Paul says here in these first few verses, they take it the wrong way. And it seems that they just did not like those words, order and must. Now, as Christians, must we give a free will offering? It seems like contradiction in terms, doesn't it? It has to be a free will offering, but you must give it. How do you reconcile those two?
In the Old Testament, they were required to give at least 10%.
Yeah, and I mean, when you measure up all that they gave in the Old Testament, all the offerings that they gave besides the tithe, you know, a faithful Jew gave sometimes close to 40%. Yeah.
The more we love God, the more we should give. Not just monetarily, but time and effort.
Okay, let's back that up a minute. Must we love God?
If you want to be saved.
Okay, so we must love God. Must we love one another?
Yes.
Okay, we must. Now, in loving God and loving one another, does that involve free will offering? Okay, so it's not a contradiction then, is it? he's very right to say, I ordered the churches in Galatia, and you must do this also. And it seems to me, and here again, this is just my opinion, but it seems to me that they just didn't like that, because he has to come back in 2 Corinthians and explain what he meant by that. It seems maybe they took offense at him ordering, to where they just, if he's going to, well, let me say this. They're like children saying, don't tell me what to do. Remember we said that when we were children? Don't tell me what to do. Yeah. And so,
is it you must give, but the free will offering is you determine how much you give?
Well, you must give, but you shouldn't need someone twisting your arm to do it. And you must give willingly. We'll get in, as we look at 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 9 this morning, on how we should give, what it means to give as we have prospered. And so this is why Paul says in the next epistle, it doesn't do you any good to give grudgingly or of necessity. So evidently that's what they were thinking. Well, he's ordering us to do it. I don't want to do it. And on and on and on and on. No, that's not the point. And so he has to go back and kind of explain what he meant. Here again, this is my opinion, that it is my opinion that they don't like, when they receive this epistle, they don't like the way Paul words this. And to me, this explains why he comes back in the second epistle and writes 2 whole chapters to explain a few verses here and what he meant by those verses. Now, he says here, collection for the saints. When you open up and look at the first verse here, concerning the collection for the saints, what is he talking about? Well, this is a famine that is going on in Jerusalem, and it's not a environmental famine. There's all different kinds of famine a person can have or suffer, and some of them are man-made. A lot of them are man-made. A lot of the starving in different places in the world is not because of environmental factors, not because of drought. It's because of oppressive and tyrannical governments that are keeping the people hungry. If people are hungry, they'll do whatever you tell them to do in order to get food. Well, you have that kind of a famine going on in Jerusalem. It's not from tyranny, it's from persecution. The greatest persecutors of Christianity were never the Romans. The Romans did persecute Christianity, but the greatest persecutors of Christianity were the Jews. And matter of fact, there have been a lot asserted that the Roman persecution was never really empire-wide for a very long time. And comparatively to the persecution from the Jews, it didn't last as long. But whatever the case, the greatest persecutors of Christianity were the Jews. And so they're taking those possessions that these Christians converted from Judaism, they're confiscating their possessions, they're ostracizing them. If you live in Jerusalem and you are ostracized from the Jewish community, then you have a very difficult time feeding yourself. You have a very difficult time earning a living. And so a lot of people, a lot of people left Jerusalem. But then there are many others that stayed, and they were in famine. They were starving to death because of persecution. So Paul was taking up a collection for them. It's a collection for the saints who are in Jerusalem. We'll cover that a little bit later. So he says, as I've given order to the churches in Galatia, so you must do also. Now, here are some I don't want to say technicalities, some details about their giving. He says, upon the first day of the week, let each one of you lay something aside, storing up as he may prosper, that there be no collections when I come. Now, they met together on the first day of the week. And so what they would do, most people in the ancient world received their pay at the end of each workday. And so they would take a portion of that pay, and each day they would set it aside, and then on the first day of the week they would take that they had set aside, and they would bring it to the assembly and put it in a public or put it in a congregational treasury, a common treasury. And the purpose of this was that when Paul then came, and he explains a little later in the chapter what his itinerary, what he's planning on his itinerary being. He's in Ephesus. He's going to remain there for a while. But he intends to come to them. And when he does come, he doesn't want to go around from house to house taking up a collection. He can just go to the treasury or the treasurer or whoever's in charge of keeping that money in a common account, and they can give the money not to Paul, but they can give it to those who are going to carry it to Jerusalem. So Paul's going to come, but they're not going to give the money to him. They're going to give it to whomever they deem to be trustworthy. And then they will go take it to Jerusalem. Paul intends to go to Jerusalem as well, but he's not going to take that money. Why do you suppose that is? They would accuse him. They'd bring accusation against him. It says this later on in the chapter. You provide things honest, honorable in the sight of all men, even them. And so he knows the church in Corinth. Now, there are other congregations where I'm sure he wouldn't have a problem, but he knows them, and he's not going to give them an opportunity to bring an accusation against them.
Today's terminology would be called a conflict of interest.
Exactly. Conflict of interest. Now, let's examine this idea here of as he may prosper. It's an interesting word. It's an interesting phrase in the original language, and the terms here are often used to describe a road and say, so we might translate it this way: according to your road. Now, how do you think that, how does that translate? What kind of meaning does that have? Have you ever heard the phrase, you've got a hard row to hoe? A tough row to hoe? Well, that's not just a garden reference, but that's a statement according to our way in life. Okay, you're going to take this occupation. Well, you got a tough row to hoe the first couple of years. And so what Paul is saying here, you give according to the road that you're on. In other words, your life. Now, just use me as an example. How would you describe my road? The way I have things in life. Don't be bashful. Not going to hurt my feelings.
The first question you ask is compared to what?
Just compared to anything. Compared to the rest of the world.
Well, in the United States, we have it better than any other country in the world. We still have our poor population and those who struggle to just have a meal every day. It's our responsibility as Christians to see that those folks get what they need. If we walk past somebody and we know they're hungry, we know they're cold, and we don't do anything about their situation, we'll have to give an account for that. We also, in our society, have those who abuse that, those who would take advantage of us.
Okay.
God is, we're created in God's image, so we can discern, or should be able to discern the situation to some degree. I'll illustrate it this way. I drove truck a lot of years and been in a lot of places in this country. And Tuscarawas County is not the only place where you see people at the stop sign or interstate and all ramps. And Sherry was always very concerned that I had enough to eat when I was in the truck. And so she was very generous in her preparation of meals. So when I saw somebody along the side of the road, rather than give money to somebody that I don't know, their sign says anything will help, I'd stop and put food in a bag and hand it out the window. Most folks were very grateful to get it. One fellow that drove away, he was already eating the apple that was in the bag. Another fellow, I saw him as I turned the corner and drove away, I looked in the mirror, and he looked in the bag and just took the bag and threw it over the guardrail. We have no control over that. What we do with the opportunity that we are confronted with is what God looks at.
So you were giving according as the way you traveled your road. You had it pretty good. Okay.
Had another one.
So,
I stopped at a rest area on the west side of Indianapolis, or Fort Wayne, and when I came out, I could see somebody standing beside the truck. And when I walked up, it was this lady, and she said, "Can you help me?" And I said, "How do you need help?" And she said, "Well, my boyfriend was beating me, said I just had time to grab my baby and get out of the house. I didn't grab my purse, I needed gasoline, could you help?" And I said, "Well, there's a BP station about a mile down the road. Do you have enough gas to get down there?" "Well, I think so." I said, "Okay, follow me down there and I'll fill your tank up." No, I just need the money." And I said, "Well, if you need gas, I'll put gas in the tank.
Yeah.
I won't give you cash." Went out to Minnesota, 2 days later, coming back, stopped at the same rest area on the other side of the highway, and came out, guess what I saw? Same lady.
yeah.
By the truck. She didn't remember me.
She's probably making 50 grand a year doing that.
I said to her when I approached the truck, I said, "Can I help you?" And she said, "I hope so." And I said, she said, "My boyfriend was beating me," and I said, "You had time to grab your baby, didn't have time for your purse, you need gas." And she couldn't run fast.
Yeah.
So there's always the opportunity to be taken advantage of when we're helping folks, but we shouldn't let that stop us from trying to do everything we can to help folks.
So we're not given a percentage in the New Testament. We're told as you have prospered, which is according to your road. Okay? So again, use me as an example. What kind of a road do you think I'm on? Let me ask you a question. Do I wear this every, you think, yeah, you wear it. Okay, I do wear a lot of the same stuff on. But you've seen me wear different ties, right? Shirts, trousers, jackets, whatever. So I have more than one. I've got a whole closet full. I've got more than one pair of shoes. I have 2 vehicles in the garage. I have a very comfortable home that could house 3 times as many people who are not living in it, who are living in it now, very comfortably. And I open up the refrigerator and I just stand there and have to choose. Ham, chicken, what kind of cheese, what kind of bread. So what kind of road am I on? I have a comfortable salary, I could make a comfortable living. Anywhere I want to go, I can get in the car and go. I've got some plastic in my wallet that if I really wanted something, and I could go get it. Our truck, our SUV broke down, or at least I learned that it had a blown head gasket in it, or problems. In the morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning, and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we had a new to me truck. So what kind of road am I on?
You could have gone and bought a brand new truck, but you chose not to do that.
Well,
You were comfortable.
I don't think I could have got a brand new. Have you seen one of those things? I nearly choked on the price of the one I got. So what kind of road am I on? I'm on a good road, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. I'm on an easy road. Now that needs to be reflected in what I put in the collection plate. Why? Because there's some brethren down in Jerusalem, they don't have an easy road. Their road is plumb hard. And I want to try to make their road easier. So according to well, what percentage is that? Everybody wants to know. When we went to Steelton and told Heather, I said, we were reflecting on our free will offering. I said, I want to do an experiment. We probably need to do this again. I want to increase our offering every week by $5 until we have to go without something in order to put that extra $5 in. Let me tell you something, it's quite a while before we had to actually go without something. Say, no, we're not going through the drive-through. We're going to go home and eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because it's a little tight. I would challenge you to try it, whatever amount, a quarter, whatever. But am I having to go without something? Is it causing me a little bit of pain? Is it changing my road from being the lap of luxury? That's really what it is. I mean, I look at the life that Heather and I have, and I mean, really, it's the lap of luxury, as far as I'm concerned. Am I willing to suffer a little bit of discomfort, or more than a little bit of discomfort, so I can help someone else who's not in the lap of luxury, whose road is hard? And then, what if everybody does that? They just suffer a little bit. Then is that not going to help a multitude? I'm serious. That $5 extra week, I mean, it took several months of us doing that to where, you know, before we swung through the drive-thru at McDonald's or got something extra, you know, and something extra at Walmart, or, you know, we had to kind of, no, maybe we'll put that back. And so Paul's saying here, examine the road you're on, and then think about the road that some other people are on and how you can help in that way. You cannot put a percentage on that. So if there was a percentage, what would we do? We'd do that and no more. And see, the heart doesn't have to be involved in that. I don't have to think about what other people are suffering. Okay, that's a percentage. There it goes. I don't have to think about anybody else. But if I'm given according to the road that I'm on, then I have to think about other people. Other people who need help, other people who need the gospel, other Christians who need encouragement. Now, what if I'm on a hard road? And God doesn't expect me to give according to what I don't have, but according to the road that I'm on. Now, giving is an act of faith, is it not? Giving is an act of faith. How is giving an act of faith? Okay, so you have faith in those who are stewards. Certainly need to have that situation in a congregation, that you have those who are trustworthy and faithful in their administration of that which they're stewards over.
God will supply your needs.
Exactly. Was that woman who put in the 2 mites, did she have faith? Do you think she put that in grudgingly? When we've had our first child, and I was laid off from building. It was kind of there was a building slump, and I had been laid off, and there really wasn't a lot of work to be had where we were living there in South Georgia. So I went and took a job slinging food at the Waffle House. And so I would work nights at the Waffle House, and then I'd do whatever odd jobs I could pick up doing carpentry work in the day when I could pick up those odd jobs. But the cook at night at the Waffle House, they look at him as sort of an assistant manager. He has charge of the cash register, and so if the unit manager comes in and needs to make a deposit, then the cook at night has to sign off on that. And he has to write down the tips that the waitresses get on each shift, so they do their tax reporting and all for the state of Georgia for federal income tax. And I said all that to say this. If the unit manager over that Waffle House, he'd come in about 3 hours into when I started my shift, and he said, we need to go through the cash. And then he would go and put it in the night deposit box. Do I have any right to say, hey, you're not taking this? No. Why? That's not my money, right? It's not my money. Now, I'm in charge of it. When I'm there and I'm signed in on shift, I'm in charge of it. But does that mean I could clean out the register and go make a car payment or go get something new furniture for the house or anything like that? Well, sure, if I wanted to spend the next, I don't know, however months or years in jail, I guess. Why? It's not mine. But I'm a steward over it. I'm in charge of it. So when I hand it off to the manager, then he's in charge of it. But does he have a right to go do something? No. Why? Because it's not ours. It belonged to the company. Well, we need to look at that. We need to take that same viewpoint regarding really everything we have. It's not mine. Now, I'm given charge over it, but it's not mine. So therefore, what I put into the collection plate really belongs to whom? It belongs to God already. Solomon pointed this out when he dedicated the temple. I think it's 1 Chronicles 29, if I'm not mistaken. His prayer dedicating the temple, they had all of these treasures. All of the cedar and all of the gold and all of the precious metals, other precious metals, and all of the precious fabrics and all this that went into the building of the temple. You know what Solomon says in his prayer? He says, we have simply given to you what is already yours. We have just simply given to you what is already yours. So,
isn't there a line that we have to be careful about, the one increase that you mentioned, $5 every week, so that God will give me more? Wrong attitude?
sure, and I was talking about this. When was I talking about this? One of the radio programs. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Now, a lot of people translate or understand inherit the earth means I get a bunch of earthly stuff. And so if I'm covetousness of worldly things, then I look at that and I say, oh, I have to be really meek. And so my motivation for being meek is covetousness. What's the problem with that? So you can't be meek with that kind of a covetous attitude, number one. I mean, they're on opposite sides of the ruler. You're not going to join the two together. Number two, that's not what God's talking about, inherit the earth. Not a lot of worldly things. And so, you know, if we look like at what Malachi says, give and it shall be given unto you without measure, poured out, you know, shaken down and running over. I had a young man, I knew a young man, or didn't know him, but it was an acquaintance of a friend. And this is back in the mid-90s, I guess. And he had got into this deal with gold, investing in a gold mine, I think in Alaska, a gold company there. And he was actually taking and investing money off of a credit card because he was getting such a big return that he would invest off of the credit card, and he was doing okay with it, I guess, and he's doing okay today, so I guess it didn't wipe him out. But that always seemed funny to me. You know, you're borrowing money to invest money, and it just didn't really sit, it just didn't seem wise to me. So if our motivation for giving is, well, if I put this in a collection plate, God said he's gonna, wrong motivation. Wrong motivation altogether. Now, does that sometimes happen? Certainly it does. I think we've all seen it. We've all seen some people in the church that are very well to do, very well heeled financially, And they're also very, very liberal in their giving. Very generous in their giving. And so, but that's not their motivation. Paul told Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6, he's talking about giving and the love of money. He said, we brought nothing into this world. What are we taking out? Same thing, zero. And he says, be content with food and raiment. Of course, food is enough nourishment for your body. Raiment for them, there and then, meant protection from the elements. Oftentimes a person's raiment was their shelter at night. Wool, a lot of times that outer garment could be wool, and wool will keep you warm even when it's wet. So a person would use, even in harsh weather, they could cover themselves with wool and still be able to stay warm. And so shelter from the elements, which is raiment, and shelter from either too cold or too hot, and then food to eat. How many of us would truly be content with that? We're so accustomed to what we have, I think it'd be very hard. I'm just speaking for myself. It'd be hard for me, especially with a wife, to just be content as long as we had shelter from the elements and food to eat, and that's pretty much it. When one set of clothes and somewhere to get out of the weather and food to eat. It'd be very hard to be content with that for me, because I'm so accustomed to, like I said earlier, the lap of luxury. I think it's something probably we need to work towards. I think I'm just speaking for me personally, the longer I live, the more I realize that I've just got a bunch of junk that I don't need. When we moved from Florida, how many truckloads did we take to? I don't know. It had to be a dozen. Probably half a dozen went to Goodwill and thrift stores. I mean, filling up we had a Lincoln Navigator then, and I had a little utility trailer, and we would fill that up at least 6 times, taking it to, and then the rest of it was going to the landfill. Taking us up, why did I keep this? And you're asking the kids, why did you keep this? And just giving stuff away. And then, when we moved from New Martinsville to here, I thought we got rid of a bunch of stuff. Well, the longer you're a family, you're married, you just accumulate lots of stuff. And you realize I don't need that. The road that we're on should determine what we give. It's not a percentage. It's not a percentage. Before we move on to from the actual as we have prospered to Paul's instructions on the trustworthiness, anyone have any questions, comments, or observations, anything you'd like to add about what it means when he says here, as we are prospered? Yes.
When you mentioned the widow, and Jesus used that as an example, being in his position, he knew her circumstances. It says she gave all that she had. The things that we learn as we're studying and coming here are the things that we put to desire. And that lady had a desire to give. It was ingrained in her.
That's why she gave more.
And she gave whatever she had.
It wasn't the amount. It was Jesus judged between what she gave and the road she was on. And that's what dictated his commendation of her. It's so tempting to go to 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, but we're going to study that when we're in 2 Corinthians. So I don't want to get there ahead of time. Verse 3 says, when I come, whomsoever you approve by your letters, I will send to bear your gift to Jerusalem. So Paul is staying disconnected from their money. I was told when I first started preaching, I've been preaching a few years, I guess, but I said, there's two things in a church that a preacher never touches, well, three things. He says, any woman other than your wife, the thermostat, and the money. He says, you keep your hands off of those three things, you'll be good. So, here's what Paul's doing. He says, you approve them because he knows what might come of it. He says, if it is fitting, verse 4, that I go also, they will go with me. So even, Paul says, he plans to go. Well, it'd be more convenient, it'd be more expedient. Paul, since you're going anyway, you just take it. No, 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 no. Whoever you approve, they're going to go with me. I'll go with them, but he's not taking the money. And so it's just going to avoid any suspicion there. Now, beginning in verse 5, then he talks about some of his personal plans coming up and what he intends to do, and that he's going to come to them. We passes through Macedonia, and one of the reasons is, verse 6, that you may send me on my journey wherever I go. That is, he expects them to support him. What's the difference between the money they give for the Jews in Jerusalem versus the money they would give him personally? Well, that's for him. The money they were taking up the collection for was for whom? Others. For the Jews in Jerusalem. So they say, well, the preacher shouldn't touch the church's money. Well, treasurer cuts me a check every week. That's mine. It's got my name on it, their signature on it. Okay? So that's mine to use as a financial support this congregation gives me. But that's all the money that I'm to touch. So this is why he says, you can help me on my way. Well, that's for him. He wants to stay a while with them, verse 7. But at the present time, he wants to stay in Ephesus. Why? Because there's a great door of opportunity. But I want you to notice this. What comes with the opportunity? Adversaries. Talked about this a couple of weeks ago. When does the bomber pilot encounter flak? When he's over the target. And so if we're going to be working in a fruitful ministry, a fruitful location, what should we expect? Flak, adversaries. If we're not experiencing adversity, it might be either number one, the devil doesn't see us as a threat, or see me as a threat, or you as a threat, or we're not over the target. So that didn't discourage Paul. He says there's many adversaries, and the reason is we're over the target. There's lots of opportunities here. He wants them to treat Timothy well when he comes, verses 10 to 12. Now Apollos, Paul wanted Apollos to go to Corinth. He says, I strongly urged him, verse 12, but he was quite unwilling to come at this time. And I think you should write there at verse 12, chapter 1, verses 11 to 13. I think Paulus did not want to further the schism and the division that was already in Corinth. They were calling themselves after each other's name. All right, we'll pick up there and get into 2 Corinthians next week. Thanks for being here this morning.